Welcome to another Guzzling Gourmet baking session. So, again, we're using CupCake Jemma, okay, one of her recipes. We're going to make a Persian Love Cake, okay, made with almond flour. So technically, if you can get some gluten-free plain flour as well, you can make this gluten-free. But we're using ordinary plain flour with it. Like I say, it's mainly almond flour, and it's going to be a fragrant and moist cake. So, like I said, it's going to be almond flour, plain flour, some lemon zest, butter, sugar, eggs, quite a lot of eggs, 6 eggs. Okay, so you want a bit of yogurt and you want some spices, but we'll come into that. So, let's get baking. Okay, so in a bowl, a big bowl, I've got 300 grams of softened butter. You can see it's not that soft. Unfortunately, I forgot to take it out of the fridge last night. And then we're just going to take 1 whole lemon, which I've given a bit of a wash, and we're just going to zest that into there before, well actually, I'll say before, we can add it now. And we're going to add some cast sugar, okay, 225 grams of cast sugar, see how that goes. So I'm just going to zest this lemon into there and then we'll get on with it. So I've kept the lemon because we're going to want some lemon juice later, not to go in the main cake, but for our sort of finishing. So now all I'm going to do is whip this together, get it all nicely whipped up. So it's all nice and soft and creamy, all mixed in, and then we'll start adding some eggs. Right, so they're whipped together, so now we're going to add 6 eggs, but we're going to do that 2 eggs at a time. So I'm just going to crack 2 eggs in, whip that in, whoop, it goes a bit of shout. If I did it straight in there, that's what will happen. So I'm just going to go through, slowly adding them eggs in, whipping them all in together. Now you might see it looks like it curdles or separates, don't matter, just put all flour in. So that's all the eggs in there, so it's already runny at the minute because we haven't put any flour in, have we? So now we're just going to make it runnier. Okay, well, not that runny. We're now going to add, oh, it's got that in there, a teaspoon of rose water. Okay. As Sally on CupCake Jemma says, which is Sally's making it, if it's rose extract, don't add that amount in because that'd be like, whoa, too much. Right. So in that goes. Just going to quick combine with that. Now, we're now going to add in plain flour. I've got 150 grams of plain flour. And I've got 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and that's going to go. And then another like aromatic spice. Oh, actually, before I do that, a generous pinch of salt, about 1/4 teaspoon. Right. Probably didn't put 1/4 teaspoon in, I don't want too small. And then what we're going to add is some ground cardamom. Okay, now I bought some ground cardamom, got it from Amazon, tiny little thing, a bit expensive. I could have made it. I've got some green cardamom pods. Well, actually, they're not very green looking, but I've got some more. You'll want about 9 of them, and you just pick the seeds out. Don't want all them husks in there, and then grind it up in a mortar pestle or something. But I've bought ground stuff. So I've got in there 1/2 teaspoon of ground cardamom. So in that goes. And now all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to gently sort of combine all them in together. So the next thing is 400 grams of almond flour. That's going in. And again, we're now just going to mix it. So this will get quite sort of thick, heavy-ish. Doesn't matter. Okay, and then the only other thing we're going to be putting in after we mix all this together is some plain yogurt. Okay, so that's all well mixed together. I'm going to get the spatula out in a minute, make sure I get it all off the bottom and off the sides. But before we do that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of natural yogurt. I think she said you could use sour cream if you wanted. Okay. So in that goes. And now, again, just going to mix that in. So that's all thoroughly combined. So our final thing is what we're going to cook it in. Now we're going to do it in a bundt tin. That's one of those bit like the pipe in the middle, a cake. If you haven't got one, doesn't matter. Just makes it look a little bit posh, doesn't it? It is love cake after all. I want it to look a bit different. So you can do it in like a cake tin or whatever, but we're doing it in this. Now with bundt tins, they're quite often textured like this. This isn't overly textured, but one thing we don't want it is the sticking in there. So it needs a good greasing, okay? And particularly if you've got lots of little nooks and crannies, make sure every bit of it is thoroughly greased, because this cake, although we're adding a bit of like an icing to it, it's not like covering the whole top. So if you've got any bits that stick in the pan, you know, creating like holes and that in it, it's going to show. So make sure it's all nicely greased in there. Okay, so that's greased up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to take some of this batter, because it's, you know, a very thick batter. It's not going to pour, and we want to make sure it's all evenly spread in there. So I'm just going to go round, gradually putting all of that batter into there. So you're going to want to put your oven on to get it a nice up temperature, 165 if you've got a fan oven. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a palette knife and I'm just going to go round evenly, sort of spreading it and flattening it. Make sure it's all sort of evenly spread in there. When we cook it, obviously this is going to end up being the bottom, so we're not too worried about what happens to the bottom of it. Obviously we want to make sure it's cooked all the way through, and we do that with the old skewer test, see if it comes out clean. Now it probably want to bake for about, she reckons about 45 to 55 minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to finish that and I'll check my temperature of my oven. Right, so my oven temperature is right. That's nice and flat. That's going in. And like I say, I'm going to give it 45 minutes and then I'll check it and with the skewer, and then we'll go from there. So when it's cooked, we're going to be turning it out, and then we'll show you how to do the finishing touches. Now I've had 45 minutes, I checked it and it's still not done. We're going to have to do a little bit of trimming because it's actually risen and bulging all around the outside, but you'll see when we can take it out. Now when we bring it out, we just let it cool for up to 10 minutes in the tin, and then we want to tip it out while it's still hot, because otherwise it's going to stick to the tin. Okay, wait for you, it's not going to stick to the tin. And then once that's out, we let it cool for a little bit longer, but we're going to make a syrup that we're going to sort of soak into it. So to make that, you've got 100 grams of caster sugar, about 2 to 3 tablespoons of water, and half a teaspoon of rose water. Okay, and we've got a pan ready to do that in. So basically we're just going to chuck those ingredients in there and then heat it up until it's melted. And then we're just going to paint that all over the top. Okay, now it'll then be let to cool completely for about an hour before we do the final icing and decorating stage. Okay, so I'm just going to check on that in a second, and as soon as that's ready and out, we'll start on the syrup. So there it is, it's out. Okay, and like I say, it's bulged, so what I'm going to have to do is try and trim some of that, because that's going to be a little bit tricky to turn that out. Remember, that's going out the bottom. But either way, we're going to leave it just to cool for up to 10 minutes, okay, before we try and tip it out. It does look like it may have stuck a little bit around the side, but I'll check that, because obviously we want it just to come clean out. So, like I say, 100 grams of caster sugar, 2 to 3 tablespoons of water, half a teaspoon of rose water. That's what you've got to get ready next. Right, so I've just flattened the top off, as it well, the bottom off. In goes my sugar, in goes my water, and then, like I said, about half a teaspoon of this, and then we're just going to put it on the heat and cook it until that sugar's all dissolved. We're not trying to caramelise it or anything like that. Okay, we just want to get it all melted and nice and syrupy. So that's what I'm going to do. And then, like I say, we should be in a position then to turn that out and paint this on top after we've made a few holes in it. Okay, so I've got that all up. It's been simmering away for about 3 or 4 minutes. We're just going to leave it a minute or so longer. But in the meantime, we're now going to turn out our cake. Now, we don't want a wire rack to begin with, simply because this obviously still needs to cool. Okay, so moment of truth. Here we go. That's the bits where I trimmed it. Okay, that went flying off then. There was some that I hadn't scooped off. Hopefully there's no more. So, it might be a bit stuck in there. Oh no, there we go. So, there we go. Nice golden colour. Okay, so I just need to get up all this spilled, and then we're just going to let that cool for a little bit. And in a minute's time, I'm going to turn that off and we'll start feeding it into the sponge. So all I'm doing now is I'm just going to go around the top and make some holes with the skewer. Okay, and what we'll then be doing is taking that syrup and pouring it over, but rather than just pour it all over, just try to control it a little bit better. We're going to brush it over it. Okay, and hopefully that way, you know, it will get a chance to sink in rather than just pour off everywhere. So I'm just going to take a pastry brush and I'm just going to go around it, gradually adding that syrup so that it gets a chance to soak in. And then, like I say, we're then going to leave that for an hour to cool down, ready before we do the final decorating stage. So we just pause here. Okay, so we're at our final stage. Okay, I've got, like I say, 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, and I've got 150 grams of icing sugar. Now, we don't want the icing too thick. On the other hand, we don't want it too runny. So I'm just going to add some of that lemon juice and start to mix it in. And we'll keep just adding it a little bit at a time until we get the right consistency. So we want it to run, because what we're going to do is we're going to pour it on here and we want it to sort of drizzle down. Okay, but obviously not just run all off. Okay, we don't, well, you'll see when we do it. So rather than chuck all that in there and make it too runny, we just do it a little bit at a time. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going, and when I think it's the right consistency, I will show you. Right, I think that's sort of just about there. Okay, I've used about 2/3, so I've used about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to get to that. Now I've got some chopped up pistachios, and I've got some crystallised rose petals. Okay, so they're going to be our final bit of decoration. So what we're going to do first off is we take our cake and we're just going to drizzle some icing, and then we just want it to sort of gradually sort of trickle down. Okay, doesn't matter whether it goes on the inside or the outside. So I'm just going to go around gradually adding some of that icing and getting some of it just to run down the sides. Okay, and then we'll decorate it. So there you go, so that's got some icing drizzled around it. So our final thing is we're now just going to sprinkle some of these roughly chopped pistachios around the top. And then once we've done that, we're then going to add a sprinkle of these rose petals as well. And that is your fragrant, moist Persian Love Cake. Okay, so there you go. Not going to taste it right now. Okay, I'm just going to let that set a bit and then I'll taste it later, but you probably won't get to see me taste it.